Good morning and welcome back to the Emporium. It's been a few days since I've been away from the channel. I haven't exactly been feeling the best. Today is a Wednesday, and today I'm going to be doing a review for a soon to be um, Wild Eye release entitled Housemonster. And here's the picture. I don't have a physical copy to show you on display for the video this morning. I got this as a digital code. As a personal favor of the director of this film on Twitter. I reached out to him and he gave me more or less a digital copy. I put in his password and I was able to watch it. And I'm not gonna say on what service because I don't know if I can get anybody in trouble or not. I don't know. I don't think so, but it's Housemonster. It's considered as horror, and you can currently watch it on Amazon Prime for 99 cents. It came out last year on December 1st. Originally, its original name was Housemonster, one word, as opposed to two now. Clocks in at about 70 minutes, and it's directed by David Axe, who also did Lection. He also wrote along with Bradley J. Petit, and it stars Mike Amason, that played in Bad Girls, Aaron Blomberg, that played in The Theta Girl, Jennifer Hill, who also played in David Axe's Lection, and Josh Kern, who also played in Beowulf, not Beowulf, but Beowulf. A struggling actress named Jen self-quarantines herself in this film at home during a global pandemic, and something joins her in her home. Whatever it is, it's hungry, and the days wear on. It gets bolder and more talkative. Jen must confront the monster in her house, but first she must confront the monster inside herself. A bit of trivia about this movie before we get started. Uh, there's a few scenes in this movie, Housemonster. This movie was actually shot without a crew as well. Basically, the cast shot their own scenes using their own smartphones and webcams and recorded their own audio. Apparently, this is due to the effect that the pandemic was very real, not just in this movie but in real life as well. Um, they have an official Facebook site for this movie as well. All the filming locations were done in Columbia, South Carolina. I've been there before. It's a very pretty area. Uh, Columbia was the choice of shoot here, I guess, for the movie. Production companies were Defiant Productions and Siphon Adventures, and soon to be in September, a distributed title through Wild Eye Releasing. And they did a really good job with $2,500 on this movie's budget. But we're going to get started on the review. So let's get started. Like I said, this movie is Housemonster. It kicks off the shot of the exterior of the Jennifer's house. It appears that the prowler outside is a monster of sorts, which we only really get to see the hands trying to get into what looks to be an empty house, but via the doors and by windows. It eventually does pop and open a door and walks in. We see the movies on screen. We actually get a shot of what the name of the movie is right after it walks into her house. And the name of the film is obviously Housemonster. Uh, we then see a girl named Jennifer. She's on her laptop and she asks herself, "Oh, where's my coffee?" So she gets up, and in the background we see the monster walk past the door frame down the hallway, like really like lickety split. She doesn't see it at all. She sits back down after grabbing her coffee. Uh, she is recording through via her laptop as well. She tells us, the viewer, more or less that the pandemic has been going on for 45 days. She says 27 days since the first death, 25 days since the first curfew, and 24 days since she first heard the word social distancing. and 23 days since she's touched another human being. So it appears Jennifer is an unemployed stage actress. It's established. She's really bored and, by herself. She says she has plenty of food and TP and about $1,000 to her name, and at least she has Netflix, Hulu, and Stitcher. Um, she she has a play too that she wants to write during her time in lockdown. So plenty of stuff to do without having to leave her house. It seems to me at this point in the movie, she's battling a bit of cabin fever as well. She starts over a more positive message. Basically, she re-records what she recorded for us prior. But this time it's a much more positive message in her video that is more lighthearted and less gloomy, where she even tries to pass off a bit of a smile and kind of downplay the pandemic. She then runs down how many days the Zanies all started with the pandemic. But this is more of a parody, in a more of a parody kind of way. She entitles her first episode, obviously episode 1. She then tells the camera she's going back to bed, or there's a creature that goes back the opposite way she came, such she doesn't see this monster lurking in her house once again. And we then see Jennifer wake up from her much-deserved sleep, and she calls her friends her friend at 3 in the morning, and tells her friend that she feels like someone is in her room watching her. She tells her friend that she's being silly, more or less, and her friend says it's normal. Everyone is acting a bit, paranoid due to the pandemic. She tells her there was someone there, at least she's got company, and she kind of laughs it off. But Jennifer, she asks Jennifer she'll be okay for the rest of the night, and she says, yeah, she'll be okay. She tells her to call anytime, just don't make it at 3 in the morning. And that's the vibe I got here, kind of like she kind of perturbed the friend at calling at 3 in the morning, which is understandable. I wouldn't really want to get a call at 3 in the morning unless, there was something really, really serious going on, maybe. But that's the vibe I got at 3 in the morning with his friend. The next scene, we see our monster sneaking into another room. Again, Jennifer's not seeing it. She's still shooting her video, and her challenges with the pandemic are starting to take fold here. She still thinks someone is in her house with her, so she goes around checking all her doors if they're locked. She does all of that and starts to comically fantasize about a guy in a grocery store. Some funny humor there, here and there about this point in the movie. She goes, "Mommy needs a Sammy." She even states a little later on, which he tells she's lonely for, male companionship. She then opens up her cupboards, and we see she has written the number of servings that she has left of each type of food. She tells us she's going to make a PB&J sandwich, and that we're going to watch her eat it, more or less, because she has a channel, more or less, like YouTuber. She has 3 subscribers, and she refers to them as little perverts and dirty sluts that like to watch her. She has a really good sense of humor, this Jennifer character. She then goes to get the loaf of bread, and she sees the number 10 on it, and she has less than, I think like 6 or 7 pieces of bread left, so she knows somebody's dipped into it. And she's like, who the hell ate my bread? And then she thinks she hears a noise and gets freaked out. She then starts to look around, doesn't see anything, but is still freaked out. She goes back to make the sandwich, and goes to another, making her way to another part of the house, and her back is turned to us, and it evades her once again. We see this at this point. She's eaten nearly half of the sandwich. She comes over to her camera and is wondering what is why is still recording and acting like she had to shut it off prior. So she stops and rewinds it and notices something behind her in frame walking down the hallway. And she starts crying over it and feels trapped at the same time, like she knows now there's something in her apartment. We then see her have a camera set up in her bedroom. She's now ready to begin shooting episode 2. We then see she's actually has at least a 4 camera set up in her house of her main rooms in her house. She then reaches out to a Coach Brad on Messenger, asking him if he is up. He is in fact up writing a play or a book, or I think it was a book. He is a playwright. She asks him if he can coach her through her play. She tells him that there's a ghost or something in her house eating her PB&J. He asks her if she's drunk, and then we see her getting a bit boozed up, if you will, during their conversation. She tells him about her own play about loneliness. He thinks her play is a bit of a downer, and that he thinks she should try to make it funny, scary, or a bit more exciting. He's still not liking her play at this point. She tells him he should subscribe to her web show, and he asked her what is going on, how that's going for her with the web show. Um, she says she only has 3 subscribers. She thinks they're all there just to watch her for perverted reasons, more or less, because people are lonely. One being her neighbor. He assures her that 3 subs is not that bad, and then she goes back asking him about her play, the theme being about loneliness. We then get a shot of Coach Brad for a quick second. We see her go into full detail on the act of being alone. Coach Brad, this is where it gets kind of trippy a little bit, because it's like, I guess it's like it goes from her house onto a stage where she's performing this play, and it kind of gets kind of David Lynch like here for me a little bit. I kind of liked it, but I kind of didn't. It's kind of trippy a little bit. But Coach Brad tells her the world will never be able to understand her like only she can. She says to him, "We are always alone, aren't we?" And the words has she knows the truth, causing her to tear up, because he's telling her the truth about what's going on in her current state. To me, she's going through depression, and at this point of the movie, it's well understandable. He tells her that they are alone together. He tells her to go back to writing so he can too. So they let each other go in a bit of a deep, like I say, a very deep meaning scene between Coach Brad and Jennifer in this scene. Kind of trippy a little bit. It's now the next morning. We see her once again with her camera. We hear what sounds like a TV in the background, a radio. She's sitting down and she calls her dad. He asks her about her new play. She tells him that she has writer's block, more or less, and her father is suffering from dementia. He asks her about how she's holding up during the pandemic. She makes a joke about him being 120 years old. I guess they have a bit of a kind of a comedic relationship. He tells her that he himself is tougher than a $2 steak, and that he has company, and she thinks he's being like legit serious. He's got company, which he really means his imaginary friend, and he's kind of like downplaying this dementia, And she goes, "Dad, you shouldn't make like a joke of your dementia." He tells her, "Jennifer, I'm not afraid," uh, and she tells him maybe he should be. He was in the beginning. He was in the beginning with his dementia, but no more. He states. She asked him to change the topic, and he tells her he saw a fox squirrel on that morning. and he tells her that it's very rare that he could find a fox squirrel. She asked him if he thinks she asked her father if he thinks animals get lonely. He asked her about the black lab. He goes, "Do you remember the black lab you used to have as a child?" I think its name was Wicked, but I couldn't really tell if it was Wicked or Wicked. And she said, "Yeah, I remember. Why?" And he goes, "Remember when it used to walk around you all the time?" He goes, "Man, that puppy worshipped the ground you walked on." She tells him she wishes she had a dog right now. Things are getting weird, she says. He tells her to hang in there, and he has a tip for her. Uh, Write one word on her play. Get writing it right now. Write one word. And then another. He tells her to write another word. He tells her to write two more words. He says, "See, you're on your way. You shouldn't need my help no more." She tells him she will always need him. He tells her he loves her too. Her the same thing for him as well. You can tell they're quite close. The pandemic separation is getting to be too much for Jennifer. Then it cuts away from that scene, and she senses someone is close by when she gets off the phone with him. She tells them, "Whomever you are not allowed in my home." She tells them this is a one-woman show. She tells them to come back when the play is done, not until she's gotten herself figured out. Um, I think this is when she kind of interacts with the monster again on the stage scenery, kind of like the mind trippy kind of stuff. And the creature says, starts to say some more words, and it finishes her sentence. It says scary. And we hear a deep voice in the distance, something monstrous. The scene is dark in this area of the frame, so you don't really get to see the monster. You just kind of guess it's there because you heard the voice. She screams and starts to come off the hinges when she hears it talk. When it goes to the other realm in this movie, that's what I'll call it, the other realm. That's what it kind of feels like. Feels very David Lynch-like for me. She thinks she's going crazy at this point. She then notices more of her bread is missing. She starts throwing different loaves of bread at this unseen monster around her kitchen that she starts to refer as her imaginary friend. She then becomes more bait, more or less. Uh, or Then she becomes a bit more rational, not bait. I'm sorry, a bit more rational, and starts to think about her three subscribers. She tells them that she has lost her, talking to herself, she has lost her mind. We then see her put the laptop down that she's been holding and walks out the door. And then we see a monster in the film reach out from underneath the table and grab something, but she comes back in before it's able to grab what it wants off the table, and it puts its hand back under the table, much like Thing, or like in Adam's Family. Is it Thing or is it? I don't know. I can't remember. The hand thing. Kind of sneaks back under the table. That's what it kind of reminded me of. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Adam's Family with that scene. We then see her at camera 9, which is her back door. She begins to film episode 3 while going out for a morning jog. She then takes us around the neighborhood, giving us a bit of a tour of the neighborhood. Uh, Talking about a guy who once let her use an ice scraper in the neighborhood, who's a really nice guy. Another lady that yelled at her for almost stepping on her dog once. An ex-cop that used to sit on his porch with his shirt off. Kind of felt like she liked him, like sexually, maybe not, but that's the kind of vibe I got. She then gets to a point of the neighborhood where she doesn't know anyone anymore at this point. Then she tells the tells us that this house used to have the yard of the month, and she panned with her camera, and it had junk all over it, debris. It was far from yard of the month anymore. Uh, then she said she remembers one time this was a house where a couple were arguing, but she could never find out what was going on. She just thought it was always standoutish, a couple arguing. She then, on her run, spots a pizza guy. She gets back home and she's locked out. She calls the security team to try to get back in, but more or less they're not going to let her back in because anyone could say that they live here or whatever. I mean, they know. I guess they know her by face, but she more or less at this point has to break back into her own house. Uh, she then takes out her camera and tells her video she has no keys or no help and no chimney to slide down. And then we hear the door unlock, like somebody's already inside. We assume it's the monster, and it unlocks the door for her. We see the monster run off through her house, uh, and I don't know if this point if she watched the video of it doing that, but then she's like, I guess, no, she hadn't seen the video yet. What she freaked out about is like the door was unlocked, like when she wanted it unlocked, it unlocked. Um, and she's like, hell no, I'm not going in there. She then calls her friend that she called at 3 in the morning prior and tells her the details of what had happened and how she got locked out. And the friend thinks that she's bonkers at this point because she keeps talking about something in her house and it's really creeping her friend out. Uh, so she hangs up on Jennifer and she just thinks Jennifer's getting really wacky, almost not like she should avoid her. Um, Basically, in this next scene, she films episodes 4 and 5 at this point, nearly back to back. Um, you're seeing a bit of a relationship building between the monster and Jennifer. More or less, the monster is getting in her head, and it's controlling her everyday life at this point. Uh, it's taking over her a lot of her cares and worries as well, because she's obsessed with the dwindling food and like that it's always in there lingering, and she has that to think about basically at this point in the movie. We then see her in bed, and she's gasping like she's been dreaming. She calls 911 and she tells that someone has broken into her house. She tells them that they're still there and that they're in the closet. She tells them that with the officer coming over, at least it was nice to talk to someone for once because she isn't coming out of the closet because she's still in there. The cop comes over and asks her where she thinks the intruder is, and she refers to it as like an it, like the intruder's an it, and this kind of worries the police officer because like it, like usually somebody would say a prowler or an intruder, and she's referring to it as an it, like a monster. Uh, and at this point, the officer is starting to feel for her because he thinks it's just a case of cabin fever, and he tells her he can, more or less console her and things like that. He tells her that he ought to give her a ticket because it comes off as like a false call to the police, and it's taking up their time when they should be out there patrolling for the pandemic and that. Uh, because it's considered like a hoax of a call. He tells her that he broke her lock trying to come in and that he himself would pay for it. He tells her to get some sleep and lay off the booze, and she tells him to stay safe and he leaves. She then talks to her subscribers once again on cam, telling them she's going to be eaten and by this monster, uh, and they'll never see her again. It looks at this point as Jen is dealing a bit of with a multiplicity disorder as well, because she has, like, she's seeing different images of herself in her mind, and it kind of comes off like a multiplicity disorder, where it's being locked up with this, issue with the monster, and being alone is really getting under her skin. She's getting confusing images. We then see Jen finally fall asleep. She wakes up and goes into her different rooms, and then runs outside. Then goes outside only to go back inside. It gets a bit weird as to what's going on right at this part of the movie for me a little bit. It's just because it's not very, like, not very explainable to the average viewer, probably, because it's a bit mind bendy here and there. Kind of one of my only problems with the movie. I'm not a mind bendy kind of viewer per se. I know what its intentions are. I just don't know what the message is, more or less. The movie, we see what looks to be a monster grabbing stuff on the table, or is it Jen's hand? Because at this point, it doesn't look like a real monster hand to me, and it looks like she just, like, using this monster as like a metaphor for what she's going through. Um, we we then see Jen talking to her dad via face chat. She tells him that tells him, "Well, you seem in a great mood, Dad." He tells her he saw another new squirrel. She tells him that that his bar isn't set very high if he, gets a kick out of finding another original squirrel. Uh, he then asks her how she's feeling. She tells him she's tired of talking about how she feels. He tells her that the squirrel he saw was a black squirrel and not a fox squirrel. He tells her that he had a good chat. And then it pops up that this is the part where I feel really bad for Jen's dad, because he refers to Jennifer as his wife because he calls her by his wife's name. And the dad gets really confused here, and she tells him that she's not his wife, that she's his daughter, and it gets her really upset, and she begins to cry, and she gets off with a video call with him because she can't handle, the dementia right now with everything that's going on. We then see her outside, and she runs into the jog. When she's out jogging, she runs into. She's not jogging, but a person running by is jogging when she goes outside, and he asks her if social distancing is getting to her, because he heard her scream and cry out when she went to go outside. He tells her he doesn't like jogging, and he just wants to find a lake to jump into. And he kind of like downplays it like a joke, but it kind of felt like he was kind of being serious, like he was thinking about committing suicide, but maybe not. She says to him, "Are you serious?" And he says it's kind of yeah. And she says, "Well, don't you have uh, don't do that. You have so much to live for." Like she's being sarcastic because there's like nothing to do with the pandemic. And he goes, "Oh yeah, the 5 cats I own." And he kind of just like plays it off. Then he leaves, and she goes back inside. She's then seen basically laying down the ground rules to this monster, because she's had enough with it running around free and kind of controlling her life. Uh, she's telling it to keep her hands off her stuff. She then sits on the floor with her eyes closed. And then finally, we see the monster pop out of the doorway behind her. And it runs off, and it takes veers off to the left and down into a room. Uh, and then she's back into her like netherworld stage. That's the way I like to call it, because it's kind of like I say, it's kind of Twin Peakish here when she goes to this other realm, if you will, in her mind. and it's watching her from a row of looks like a row of like chairs from a theater. She's sitting on the floor with her eyes closed anyway, and uh, she opens her eyes and sees it sitting there, and it starts to, I believe it starts to crawl towards her. And it's kind of a creepy scene a little bit because we really don't know much about what the monster, what it does exactly because we haven't really seen much of it, which is another disappointing thing to me. I mean, we've seen it in bits and pieces, but I would have been much more like enthralled about the movie if it would have been a little bit more about the monster as opposed to mental illness. Uh, she punches it, and it begins to set on it, and like starts to fight around with the monster. She hits it, and she says, "Oh, this is very real." Because at this point, she's kind of doubting herself if the monster's real. She grabs a knife, and it runs off, and she try. I think it must hit her at some point, and so it gets her off of him, and it and she tries to go find it to kill it. And then we see flashbacks of all the events from within the film from earlier, like the moment with her father with the fox squirrel and different things. The movie's a very trippy movie here and there. That's not a bad thing, but it's not really my thing. Um, I don't know. I think the performance of Jennifer and some of the surrounding cast was well done. Very well done budget, things like that. But at this point, it's kind of mind trippy. Just it, I was finding it hard in parts to get into it when I was doing that. It's not a knock on the film. It's just not my cup of tea per se. We then see her say this will mark her final entry for her broadcast um, after her struggle with the creature. Um, she basically overcomes the monster. She then tells the broadcast on her laptop, this is the last of it. This is adios, more or less. We then see a black screen, and she's reading from a piece of paper. I don't know if it was the start of her play or like a bit of a early draft of her play. Uh, she's narrating, and she's reading from a piece of paper saying that the monster, more or less, it exists in all our minds. So basically, from what I gathered, there really was no monster. It was more about the monster in all of us when we're alone, when we're scared, when we're confused, when life kind of takes a full circle of what's going on. It was more about a message more than a metaphorical monster. Um, I was hoping it was going to be a monster element movie. That just because that's more up my alley. I don't do very well. I don't know if it's because I'm socially awkward uh, when talking and things like that on things, but um, I don't like anything that likes to make me think too hard. And I don't mean that. I know I say that to people and they look at you like you're crazy. It's not the case. It's just a case of I don't like my movies to be too trippy. It's not a bad movie by any means. It's a very good movie, but the story with the monster being in all of our minds and in our soul, is just too trippy for me to recommend. It's not a knock on the film, just not my cup of tea. David Axe did a really good job with this, but I don't think this was directed towards my viewership per se. More like the people that like their films with a little bit of thinking, a little bit of a message. See, I'm not big on that type of film, but that's my review for Housemonster. This is soon coming to Wild Eye for release. Um, I don't know if this will be for everybody. If you don't like your movies all that mind trippy, I don't think you'll probably like it too well. It's very talkative here and there, and not really a lot of substance at times. But it's not horrible by any means. But that's my review, and I hope everybody has a good Wednesday, and I'll see you again. Catch you later. Bye.